What is up, fight fans, and welcome to another edition of UFC Preview right here on MMA Weekly, the most trusted source in news and entertainment and mixed martial arts for almost 20 years. I'm Jim Grieshaber, call me Gries. My buddy Jeff Cain is with me, and we're about to break down UFC Vegas 20. Rozenstruik versus Gane, the heavyweights taking center stage, or center cage, in the octagon yet again. It's brought to you by CBD Emporium, featuring Level Select CBD. You guys already know the drill. The purest CBD on the planet, the highest concentrations, no THC, great products. They have immune support systems. They have CBD with melatonin so you can go to sleep at night. Level Select CBD helps you stay in the fight. And right now you'll get 50% off by going to our landing page, stayinthefightmma.com, and entering the code MMA50. The code's MMA50 at stayinthefightmma.com for Level Select CBD from CBD Emporium. Level Select CBD. Stay in the fight. And Jeff, we got a good one this weekend. The main event, major ramifications in the heavyweight division. Derek Lewis knocked out Curtis Blaydes last week in a number 4 versus number 2 matchup. This week, it's number 3, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, against number 7, Ciryl Gane. Don't let the spellings fool you. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Ciryl Gane.
Big heavyweight matchup, man. I'm coming off last week's, as you brought up, we have another meaningful bout in the heavyweight division. This fight card's a little top-heavy, but there's tons of good matchups on this card, meaningful bouts as well.
Absolutely, man. I'm really pumped for this one, Jeff. When you look at the heavyweight division and you look what Derek Lewis did last week, it's no shock. We've talked about it over and over again here on MMA Weekly, knocking out Curtis Blaydes. Blaydes was actually really looking good in that fight, and we've talked a lot about the big boys in recent shows and recent weeks, and these are two of the best. But if you're a fan of wrestling and grappling, this might not be for you. But if you're a fan of explosive striking, this one's definitely your cup of tea, man. Rozenstruik is a UFC headhunter coming from kickboxing. Ciryl Gane is a Muay Thai killer and a kickboxer. He does have a submission win, but let's not kid ourselves here. These are two big boys who are going to stand in the middle of the cage and try to punch, elbow, knee, and kick each other's limbs and heads off.
Yeah, this is a great matchup between two elite strikers. And as you mentioned, Rozenstruik has been started out as a kickboxer, not just a little bit started out. I mean, he has 86 kickboxing bouts. That's just crazy. The guy's got tons of experience. And then Gane's this guy who has a lot of hype behind him in the heavyweight division. A lot of people are talking about him. The promotion's kind of pushing him. And we'll see, maybe, are they pushing him too fast? Or is he the next generation of heavyweights coming up? All these things are going to be answered on Saturday, Jim.
Yeah, they are, Jeff, and I'm really thinking about, Ciryl Gane and Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and I can't wait. Somebody's going to sleep, I like to say, but only one loss for Rozenstruik, and he's been in the UFC, and just like every great heavyweight, or almost every great heavyweight, whether it was Velasquez, even Curtis Blaydes, we talked about it last week, not long and not very deep into their careers when they got the UFC calls, and for Rozenstruik, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fights before the UFC called his number. One of them was in Rizin, and for Gane, even fewer than that. But Rozenstruik is 11-1. He rebounded from his only loss. Francis Ngannou put his lights out, and he lost that fight in 20 seconds of round number 1 in Jacksonville when the UFC first came back post-COVID, or mid-COVID last year, I should say. But he rebounded with a big knockout win, a TKO over Junior Dos Santos. Now, he's got wins over Andrei Arlovski, Alistair Overeem, and JDS. Now, I don't want to call Overeem and JDS gatekeepers. Arlovski, we've talked about as gatekeeper. But if you want to be a top 3 fighter, you have to beat JDS. You have to beat Overeem. He's done that, but he hasn't beaten anybody in that very top tier yet. The only one he faced was Francis, and he got TKO'd in 20 seconds.
Well, I mean, Francis, you got to take that with a grain of salt. Francis can KO anyone in 20 seconds. That fight was kind of crazy. Francis just exploded with a flurry, and Rozenstruik stayed in the pocket, and tried to kind of use head movement and fire back. Well, as he did that, he got clipped, and that was it. That's what happens when you face these big heavyweights. But yeah, both these guys kind of got into the UFC earlier in their career, as you brought up, in divisions that aren't quite as deep. That's the norm.
Yeah, and you talked about his kickboxing career, man. I mean, he's got 75 or 76 kickboxing wins. And speaking of Jairzinho Rozenstruik, he's fought all over the world. I mean, what a career. He's only lost 9 fights total when you count kickboxing and UFC and MMA.
Yeah, look, here's a guy who's a knockout artist. He won 76 of those 85 kickboxing bouts, 64 of them by knockout. All of his or most of his UFC, 10 of his 11 wins in MMA have been knockouts. This guy's a knockout artist. Same with Gane, man. These guys knock you out. That's how they finish fights. Now, Rozenstruik did go to the 5th round. He has headlined a UFC event before, and so he does have that over Gane. He has gone 5 rounds. He knows what it's like to headline a UFC fight card. We'll see if that experience means anything when the leather starts flying on Saturday.
Yeah, he went 5 rounds with Overeem in a fight that he was losing. Overeem had him beat. He was winning on points, and then he turned out Overeem's lights at the 4:56 mark of round number 5, so that's essentially a 25-minute fight. Meanwhile, for Ciryl Gane, he doesn't know how to lose. He doesn't know what it feels like to lose a fight. I mean, 7-0 as a pro Muay Thai fighter, and then he only had 3 fights, Jeff, before the UFC called his number. He fought in TKO, and he literally ended people in the first and second rounds, both times, all 3 times over there. But in his UFC career, every single fight except one has been a finish. 2 submissions, 1 decision, and 1 TKO. But he's a striker who can submit. Now, Rozenstruik is not necessarily a guy who's good on the ground, so if you're looking for an advantage for Gane, if it does go to the ground, he does have a decent ground game, as he's beaten Dontel Mays and Rafael Pessoa by submission.
Yeah, he definitely has more experience on the ground than Rozenstruik does. And we talked about Rozenstruik losing to Ngannou in 20 seconds. He also holds the 2nd fastest knockout in the heavyweight division's history. That's just the nature of the heavyweight division. So we can kind of erase the time off there, man. When you get hit, it doesn't matter if it's 20 seconds into the fight or 4 seconds left into the fight. These heavyweights pack a lot of power. Yeah, I mean, this is a very interesting fight for me because, in my opinion, Rozenstruik has a ton more experience in the fight game than Gane does. But Gane seems to be getting a lot more hype right now, although he's ranked 7th and Rozenstruik's ranked 3rd. But I feel like there's a lot of hype behind Gane. He's that Muay Thai striker. He's got the flying knees. And I think, honestly, Jim, this fight's going to come a lot down to distance. It's going to be kickboxing distance or Muay Thai distance. And whoever is able to control the distance in this fight is the one, in my opinion, that's going to win it.
Yeah, and of course, kickboxing distance, you have a little more distance than the Muay Thai distance when you like to get in the clinch and throw those knees and elbows. And Muay Thai is just a dirty style of fighting. I love Muay Thai, but I also love kickboxing. And these guys are at the top level in each of their own disciplines. And Ciryl does have kickboxing experience as well. The one thing they have in common is that TKO win over JDS. They've both knocked out Junior Dos Santos, so interesting to hear I'd be interested to hear what he has to say about this fight. But when I look at Ciryl Gane, you're right. I mean, the hype train's real, and he's a big favorite in this fight, and I didn't really, it's interesting to me because Rozenstruik's the red corner fighter. He's the more well-known fighter, and usually the red corner, not always, but the red corner fighter will be the favorite more often than not. Gane is minus 250, and Rozenstruik is plus 225.
Yeah, I mean, those aren't crazy odds, but yeah, it's weird that the 7th ranked guy is ranked over the number 1 ranked guy when the number 1 or the number 3 ranked guy, pardon me, number 1 is Francis Ngannou. The number 3 ranked heavyweight in Rozenstruik. It's weird that Gane is favorited over him, and especially considering the experience. And in the UFC, they have one, like you brought up, Junior Dos Santos is their one common opponent. Both of them did pretty much the same thing to him in about the same amount of time. I don't know, man. I think that Rozenstruik's a lot. We talked about it in the last event. He's a live dog in this one, man. He's a real live dog.
Yeah, and think about this for 1 second. If you're looking for a striking advantage or disadvantage in this fight, one thing that really stood out to me, these guys throw a ton. There's a lot of volume coming your way when you watch. This is going to be a great main event if you're looking for action because Rozenstruik throws or lands more than 4 significant strikes per minute, and Gane's about 5.5. But the defense really stands out to me, where Ciryl Gane's at 73% on his striking defense, and Rozenstruik's only at 36. He absorbs 3 strikes per minute, significant strikes per minute. Speaking of Rozenstruik, and Gane is under 2. Now, all that means shit once they get in the octagon, literally. But if you're looking for something and you're wondering why Gane's a favorite, you're looking at that, the striking defense of Rozenstruik, and you're looking at the grappling ability of Gane. Those are probably the 2 reasons why he's the favorite in this fight.
Yeah, but I think that the majority of those strikes landed against Rozenstruik are probably leg kicks, considering he faced Arlovsky, Junior Dos Santos, and Overeem, who are heavily striking and heavily use a lot of leg kicks and body kicks. So I don't know. I'd have to look at the stats, but yeah, that's a really impressive stat for Gane for sure. That for 74%, I believe is what you said. That's crazy, man. That's some really good defense.
Yeah,
So we're going to see. He's going in there against a different animal, in my opinion. This, although he has beaten the former champion, it's the same one, Junior Dos Santos. I feel like this is the biggest fight of Gane's career. This is the number 3 heavyweight in the world. This is the one that's going to put him on the map. This is the one that's going to get him in the top 3, top 2 in the division. This is the one that's going to get him in the title talks. And so I feel like this is the biggest fight of his career, although Junior Dos Santos definitely has the biggest name.
Yeah, and both of them fought JDS. And you know what's crazy? When you look at the rankings, Rozenstruik dropped a spot in the heavyweight rankings without even fighting last week. So he fell to number 4. Derek Lewis came up to number 2 from 4. Curtis Blades, in a show of respect from the people who vote in the rankings, yourself being one, Blades only dropped a spot to number 3 below Derek Lewis. So Rozenstruik, not necessarily that he's looking at this and saying he has something extra to prove. You got to beat Cyril Gane anyway. But Rozenstruik probably doesn't have the opportunity to move up much in the rankings. Gane could jump up a few spots, especially with a big finish, but neither guy is going to be lined up for a title shot with a win here. Just like Lewis and Blades last week, they'd have to get another win. I really want to see the winner of this one fight Derek Lewis or Curtis Blades, and if Lewis wants to go ahead and fight, Alistair Overeem like you talked about, then why not let Curtis Blades fight the winner of this one in Blades' contract fight, which will be his last one on his current deal?
I mean, it just depends on how you're wasting a contender when you do the matchmaking like that. I'm not saying that they won't. The UFC kind of goes back and forth. Sometimes they'll put the top people, the 3 and 4, the 4 and 2 last weekend, but they don't do that all that often. Usually the number 2 guy will face, it's sort of like this fight. It's the number 3 against the number 7. You don't really see them kind of waste a contender, and I feel like that may be what they do. Not with Blades, because Blades is off a loss. But it kind of depends on what your future is for Blades. Do you think he's going to have another run? Do you want to put him in there and have him face somebody in the lower top 10, get a win, and then be back in there against the top guys? Or do you want to make him fight for his life in the last fight on his contract? It's hard to say. It's really up to the UFC matchmakers. And then a lot more goes into it than that. The timing, who's ready, who's not injured, who's not sick, and just it's the timing of these events on who faces each other. Yeah, they got a lot of options in the heavyweight division that they haven't had in a long time. I'm not opposed to those matchups. I just know that you're going to ruin Gane or the winner of that other or Lewis, in doing that. They're both sitting right there as contenders now, and they don't have to fight each other. But John Jones coming into the division and getting the number 1 title shot, getting the title shot in his first fight, then you are going to have to do these matchups. So I agree with what you're saying because the timing right now allows for that. And so normally I'd be like, I don't want to waste Lewis and I don't want to waste Gane or Rozenstruik on that and get one of them a loss right now when they're both up there in the top 3. But because of Jones coming in, we've got time. We've got time to kind of bide right now. And so I think that you're going to see those matchups. I think you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I think that they're going to put these guys, the winners of these fights, in there, but mainly because of Jones.
Mainly because of Jones coming in and getting that title shot. And if you saw Jones 5 times with squats on 455 pounds, that heavyweight body's looking good with John Jones, and he's not losing a lot of explosiveness or athleticism. But when you look at the heavyweight division, Jeff, and we're going to get to some of the other fights on this card in just a minute here on MMA Weekly, but Stipe, of course, the champ, the GOAT, on top of GOAT Mountain. By the way, shout out to Stefan Struve. Want to give him an acknowledgement. He just announced his retirement, the skyscraper, tallest fighter ever to be in the octagon at 7 feet. What reminded me of that is he had a win in 2012 over a still yet to emerge Stipe Miocic, but Stefan Struve retired this week, and it just made me think of it when I saw Stipe on the rankings. Stipe, the champ, the GOAT, on top of the mountain. Francis gets his crack, his rematch coming up. And by the way, did you see the body shot challenge with Francis and Ian Cutelaba? And Ian Cutelaba is going to figure in the news on this show in just a minute because one of his previous opponents in a memorable fight is in the co-main event. We'll get to that in a minute, teaser. But Stipe, the champ, and Ngannou number 1, they're going to fight the end of March, UFC 260. We know that. They're going to headline that. But then you have Lewis at 2, who says he wants Overeem at 6, right? Then you have 3 Blades, who just got knocked out by Lewis, 4 Rozenstruik, and 7 Gane are fighting this week. And so it's not 3 versus 7, it's 4 versus 7 now. And then Volkov is 5, Overeem is 6. So out of those 8 guys, Stipe, Francis, Lewis, Blades, Rozenstruik, Volkov, Overeem, Gane, and then John Jones comes in. You've got 9 guys at the top of that division. I don't know that all 9 are capable of being a heavyweight champ. Reem's not winning the belt. I don't think Lewis is going to win the belt. I give him a puncher's chance, obviously. I don't think Volkov is going to be a champion. But this fight this weekend, between Rozenstruik and Gane is going to let us know which one of these guys is actually a legit title contender, or it's going to go a long way toward that. Everybody seems to think leaning toward Gane in this one, but I wouldn't discount Rozenstruik. I mean, from any distance, he can take your head off. I just can't wait to see which guy is going to step up in the spotlight with all this opportunity sitting in front of him and take the bull by the horns, literally speaking, this weekend.
Yeah, and see that's where I think that Rozenstruik, who has been in a main event before and been the headline and the focus of the attention, I do feel like that does play into this fight. This is Gane's biggest, this is his first headlining event, and he's going against a guy who's headlining an event. And so I think that's going to come into play. But those rankings, man, look, the reason why I'll tell you right now, I switched them. Lewis is number 2 and Blades is number 4 in my rankings. Now,
Okay.
I think that a lot of people did what they did because they know this fight's coming up. The winner of this fight passes Curtis Blades no matter what. Right. And
Yep.
so Blades is sitting there at 3rd, but he's not really ranked 3rd in the world. We all know he's going to get passed by the winner of this fight. So I just went ahead and put him at 4 because that's where he's going to be when this all shakes out. But yeah, man, this is a meaningful fight. I don't disagree. Styles make fights, and so these two guys are stylistically tough matchups for certain people in the division, but not so tough of matchups for other people in the division. Stipe's going to take both these guys down. We expect Stipe to wrestle Francis a lot. And so that's, of course, it's Stipe. That's a bad matchup for everybody in the heavyweight division. But if these two guys go in there against Derek Lewis again, or Ngannou again, or Lewis for the first time, then all of a sudden the matchup's completely different. And I don't know. It just comes down to who lands that big shot. And then we get to the lower tier, man. Some things are going to have to happen. A lot of people are going to have to lose before Overeem got back up in there. But if Lewis and Overeem do fight, that's kind of an olive branch to Overeem, because if he takes out the top or the number, he will be the number 1 heavyweight, depending on what happens. Well, he'll be the number 1 heavyweight if Francis loses. He won't be the number 1 heavyweight if Stipe loses. But if he can take out Overeem, can take out Lewis, man, then he's right back in there. And so the way this is all working out is you got these heavyweights jockeying to be a contender behind John Jones, but they have time to do it. So they're calling out other people to kind of put plant the seed. I'd rather fight the number 6 ranked Overeem than someone else. Of course you would. Everybody would. I imagine the loser of Saturday night's going to say pretty much the same thing. I don't know what the UFC is going to do, though. But what's so good about that is the UFC's heavyweight division is so great right now. We have the top 9 fighters. We could throw them in there and mix them up and just kind of shuffle them around and then pull out names and put them in there with each other. And it doesn't say, they're not crazy matchups. You're not like, why is this guy getting to face this guy? It's just like, dude, that's a stacked division right now. But I agree with you on the title fight implications. These guys have not been in a title fight, and they're new names. They're being built by the fight promotion. And if they look really impressive, if they look like Lewis did, then they could pass Lewis being that next contender behind John Jones.
Yeah, and I would love to see Stipe versus Lewis if Stipe loses the Ngannou fight. That's the fight I would want to see, is Stipe versus Lewis. But I'm looking at this, and you have so many options if you're Dana White and Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard in the UFC right now. And if you're wondering about Ciryl Gane, last time he fought, he kind of got buried in a card and overshadowed. He was the first fight on the main card at UFC 256. He TKO'd JDS 2.5 minutes roughly of round number 2. But then Kevin Holland's highlight reel, and we put it at top 5 knockouts of the year, over Jacare, where he was literally, Jacare was in mount, and Kevin Holland knocked him out from the bottom, literally. And you remember that knockout, Jeff. And then also that was the fight card where Charles Oliveira completely dominated Tony Ferguson after almost snapping his arm in half in round number 1. And then in the main event, you had the Davison Figueiredo Brandon Moreno epic battle, as you like to call it. 4 incredible rounds and 1 not so great round in the 5th. But all 3 of those fights overshadowed Ciryl Gane that night.
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's unfortunate. But now we get to see the build up this fight. They're playing that replay over and over and over. This is the biggest opportunity of Gane's career, and that's why I'm hesitant. That's why I take a step back, because these are the moments where I don't know where people are going to perform, and it usually doesn't have anything to do with their physical prowess or skill set. This is a different deal. You're headlining a UFC fight card. You're on the cusp. And a lot of people crumble to that pressure, and then other people rise to it, and then other people don't feel it at all. I don't know where Gane is, although he's undefeated, so clearly, and he has knocked out a former champion, so those are good signs for him. It's just that I'm a little leery whenever I see somebody get this much hype, 7 fights in their career. It kind of scares me a little bit, but I think on Saturday, I'm going to either have to shut up and say that Gane's a legit contender in the division, or I'm going to be saying, man, I think maybe they pushed him along a little faster than he needed to be.
Yeah, and you're wondering, I mean, because this is definitely something, and they did push him pretty fast, but after the guy gets into the UFC, 3 fights, 4 fights deep in his career, and that's what happens with a great heavyweight. But, Jeff, when I look at this fight and I look at this fight card, it's top-heavy, obviously, and we had Lewis and Blades last week. The heavyweights have taken center stage in the octagon, and we've talked about this a lot recently, how the heavyweight division hasn't been this great in a long time and so loaded. It holds our attention. It holds the conversation for a long time. But there are, and people always tell me, oh, man, this is a shitty fight card. It's a down week for the UFC. You never know what's going to happen. Our co-main event, Nikita Krylov and Magomed Ankalaev, those guys are both ranked and on the rise in the light heavyweight division. You finally get the Pedro Munoz and Jimmy Rivera. I believe they're 8-9 at bantamweight in a stacked bantamweight division. And you got Angela Hill, who's ranked against Ashley Yoder. You got Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy. Everybody loves him on this fight card. Shout out Jose, his brother. I called one of his fights and became buddies with him. You've got Montana De La Rosa on this card against Mayra Bueno Silva. You have some really good fights overall, top to bottom. You don't necessarily have those huge names, but when you're talking about 2 guys in the top 10 in the bantamweight division and 2 ranked fighters at light heavyweight, let's see where they're ranked. Krylov and Ankalaev are absolutely ranked 8 and 9. They're 8 and 11. 8 and 11, and then Munoz and Rivera are 8 and 9. Munoz 8, Rivera 9. And then in the light heavyweight fight, yeah, you got Krylov's number 8 and Ankalaev's number 11.
Yeah, man. Look, the co-main event's a great fight between Nikita and Magomedov. I mean, that's 2 guys that are ranked, 2 guys that kind of have similar backgrounds in a way. Just one of them I feel like is on the rise, and the other one not so much. They both have great wins, I mean, big wins over, Glover. Or no, that's just losses. I'm sorry. That's Krylov's losses are to Glover, Jan, and then Misha, which are all ranked guys. He's been in there with the top of that division. And he's got wins over Ovin St. Preux and Johnny Walker, and then even Emmanuel Newton. I'm going to throw him out there because he was a former Bellator light heavyweight champ, and he's a tough matchup because of stylistically he's so unorthodox. So I throw him in there anyway because he's a hard puzzle to figure out. But Nikita figured him out. But I think that this is a beautiful fight. That this is a good co-main event. It doesn't hold the weight as the main event, but it's a meaningful fight in that division. And then you brought up, I'm not even going to talk about Rivera in that fight because it's been on again and off again so many times, man.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that fight's still going to happen. I hope it does because that is a huge fight in the bantamweight division. But I can't get up for it because we've been up for it. We've broken down that fight 5 times, it seems like,
Yeah.
And now it's finally going to happen.
It's finally going to happen. And Krylov, of course, the Russian soldier. He's a black belt in karate and hand-to-hand army combat. He's been in the UFC since 2013. One of those guys, and people go, hey, who is this guy? He's been in the UFC since 2013, Jeff. When you think about Nikita Krylov, think about his debut in the UFC. Happened all the way back at UFC 164, August 31st, my grandmother's birthday, 2013 in Milwaukee against Sal Palele. And he got and Sal, so that's a while back. The Hulk welcomed him into the UFC, and then when you think about his opponent in this one, Ankalaev, and I love just Bruce Buffer's Ankalaev. So Ankalaev has been in the UFC since 2018. Made his debut against Paul Craig in a loss, but since then he's ripped off 5 wins in a row. And that includes the 2 TKOs, the TKO and the knockout over Ian Cutelaba. Remember the fight that they stopped controversially where Cutelaba went up and chest bumped him before the fight? They stopped it, and they thought he was out on his feet, and Bisping's interview was controversial after the fight. Then they had the rematch. It was February of 2020 in Virginia, 38 seconds of round number 1. He got the TKO, but then the second one was the one in Abu Dhabi at 419 with the controversial stoppage. But anyway, long story short, he's on a roll and won a bunch of fights in a row in the division.
Oh, 100%. Look, he's a guy that either finishes you or you go to a decision. That's how all of his fights have gone. 9 of his 14 wins are by knockout. The other 5 fights went to a decision. But on this current winning streak, 4 of his 5 fights are by knockout. I mean, I think he's on the rise, man. I really do think he's on the rise. And I think that Nikita needs to be very, very careful in this fight because I feel like right now Magomed's kind of stock is higher, in my opinion, than Nikita's. But Nikita's been around for so long, man. It's hard to say. But they're both Russians, man. They both have that similar background. Magomed's got the Sambo background. You know, he's from Dagestan. What else do you need to say? That's all you got to say is where he's from, and then you just shut up about his physical skill set and what his background is, because you already know.
Yeah, no doubt. And he's definitely that type of fighter. When you say he's from Dagestan, he's going to get in there and try to beat you up. But this is an interesting fight because Ankalaev is looking to make a push and move up in the rankings, whereas, you know, when you look at Nikita Krylov's been around forever and he's already in the top 10. So that's the co-main. Munoz and Rivera, 8 and 9 in the division, and Pedro Munoz probably most famous for that knockout win over Cody No Love when Cody looked like he was going to knock Munoz out, and then Munoz came back and got the knockout. That fight against Cody Garbrandt was the one that everybody was watching for him, and that was, let me see, that was UFC 235, March of 2019. He's lost 2 in a row since then to Aljamain Sterling by decision and to Frankie Edgar, and that one was by split decision. So 2 tough fights, the decision against the Funkmaster, who's fighting for the title in a couple of weeks against Petr Yan, and then the split decision loss to Frankie Edgar, who of course just got completely destroyed by Corey Sandhagen.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a great matchup. I mean, I wish that we would have got to see that matchup last year, you know, when it was originally scheduled. You know, it just played out. That's how I feel about that matchup. It's lost its luster because it's been on, off, on again, off again, on again, off again. And then now it should be back on. I mean, hopefully, you know, we'll get there. I say that with a grain of salt again, because we had a fight fall off this fight card today due to a COVID positive test. Hopefully they get to fight, because that is such a good fight in the bantamweight division. And you know, like I said, the bantamweight division's kind of murky water right now.
It is. Remember when Rivera was going to fight Cruz, and then that fight never happened? But you look at what Rivera, where he was after his win over Thomas Almeida, and that was all the way back in 2017. But he had beaten Munoz. This is a rematch. He had beaten Pedro Munoz, Yuri Alcantara, and Uriah Faber, then Thomas Almeida, 4 in a row. And there was a lot of talk about him being a title contender. Then he got knocked out, head kicking punches by Marlon Moraes, came back with a win over John Dodson, but then lost 2 in a row to Sterling and Petr Yan, who are fighting for the title in 2 weeks. Came back with a win over Cody Stamann. So what I'm trying to say is these 2 guys are a fight here, a fight there away from being ranked 2 and 3 as opposed to 8 and 9.
Oh, 100%. They've been in there with the killer's row in that division. I mean, that's what makes this matchup so great. You know, we kind of talked about the main event where I feel like one guy has a considerably more fight experience than the other. It's not the case here, man. They've got similar fight paths, similar opponents. They beat people ranked similarly. This is a great matchup. Like I said, I hope it happens. I've been looking forward to this fight for months, and then I keep getting let down. Hopefully, this fight goes down on Saturday and they put on the show that I expected to see the first time this fight was put together, which will be amazing.
It'd be amazing, right? So I'm looking at the odds right here, and we talked about Ciryl Gane minus 265. Rozenstruik's at 210 now, plus 210. And then when you look at Krylov and Ankalaev, it's plus 275. Krylov is a big underdog. Ankalaev is a minus 350 favorite, which means, you know, he's a big favorite. And in this case, Krylov is kind of seen as maybe a gatekeeper. If you want to be in title contention, you got to win this fight, and then another 1 or 2 after that. But you know, they like him and they think he could make a push. And then looking at the rest of the card, man, I mean, look, this card, the Munoz and Rivera fight. I'm looking for the odds right now. Munoz and Rivera. Yeah, Jimmy Rivera, minus 150 favorite with Pedro Munoz at plus 120. Not a whole lot on either side there, so pretty close.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament to the matchmaking and just how competitive of a match that we all know that's going to be. I agree with all of those odds, except for maybe the main event. I think Rozenstruik's definitely a live dog, but I agree with the co-main event odds. And then I'm not going to complain about the Munoz and Rivera odds at all, because that's such a close matchup that's a pick'em fight.
Yeah, and then when you look at the rest of the card, Montana De La Rosa and Mayra Bueno Silva. Silva's minus 145, De La Rosa plus 115 in that flyweight bout. And then at strawweight, Angela Hill, coming off that loss to Michelle Waterson and Ashley Yoder. Angela Hill minus 360 and Ashley Yoder plus 300.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with any of those odds except for and I don't have a problem with the main event odds. I just think that maybe the that there's some money to be made. If there's money to be made, that looks like that's where it's going to be. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Angela Hills on this card. As you brought up, she's ranked number 12 in the women's strawweight division. And to go back, because we're closing out Black History Month, she was the first African-American female to headline a UFC event.
Yep, against Michelle Watterson.
Yeah, in that loss to Michelle Watterson. But that's a big moment, man. And so I didn't want that as we close out Black History Month with a couple of days left here in February. I wanted to throw that out there because I think that maybe she doesn't get the recognition that she deserves a little bit, but yeah, man, Angela Hill, man, she's a warrior, been around for a long time. She's fighting on this card. We'll see if she can continue to climb those rankings.
You know what's crazy about Angela Hill? All right, she got subbed by Rose Namajunas at UFC 192. And by the way, Rose Namajunas and Wei Li are going to fight coming up here, as well as Valentina Shevchenko and Jessica Andrade. That's going to be a hell of a card. That's on the Weidman Hall card. That's the UFC pay-per-view in April, the way that's shaping up right now. But you look at Angela Hill's losses in her career, and that was a tough one against the Karate Hottie, a split decision in a very, very close fight. But a split decision before that to Claudia Gadelha, and then a decision loss before that. And you look back, she's only been finished twice, both by submission. So she's never been knocked out. Of all her losses, Jeff, 9 losses, 7 of them have been by decision. And I believe 5 of them by split. She's better than her record.
I like Angela Hill because I like the underdog, man, and her story, because I feel like in 2 or 3 of those, at least 2 or 3 of the split decisions, they could have gone her way, and they did not. And Jim, we just talked about this with the Munoz and Rivera fight. Angela Hill's literally a split decision or 2 away from being ranked in the top 5. She just the fights didn't go her way. But I like watching her fight, man. I think she's funny. I kind of like her nasal voice a little bit. I don't know, man. Angela Hill brings a smile to my face. I look forward to seeing her on Saturday fight.
Yeah, and the last one I'm looking for is Alex Caceres. Bruce Leroy is a -210 favorite over Kevin Croom, and you never know what you're going to get when Alex Caceres gets in the cage in terms of an outcome, but you know you're going to get some exciting action in the cage in his fight because his style is a lot of fun to watch. Yeah,
he's a fighter who's also an entertainer. I think sometimes he takes risks that he doesn't necessarily need to take just to be entertaining to the fans. But yeah, everybody likes Bruce Leroy, if I can say it. But yeah, man, Alex he's a good personality, man. He's always smiling. He's fun to watch fight. And so I'm glad that, and the UFC usually puts somebody to kick off that main card that's going to be an exciting fight. And I think that's why that fight is in that slot. Alex is fun to watch, man. And we'll see what happens on Saturday, though. That's because Kroom thinks that he's going to win that fight.
Yeah, the hard-hitting hillbilly. He loves to stand there and trade. He bleeds a lot. I mean, my buddy Kamuela Kirk fought him on LFA back in, I want to say, 2018, and Kamuela lost on Dana's Contender Series last year. Should eventually, I think, be in the UFC without a doubt. But Kevin Kroom's a pretty tough dude.
Yeah, he is. And that's a big fight for him. He's on the main card. He's taking on somebody that everybody knows. Alex is pretty much a household name. I mean, he's not a huge star, but he's pretty much a household name. We all know who he is. And so this is a big fight for him, a big opportunity for him. But Alex is a tough out. He's tough to figure out. He approaches at weird angles. He throws those off-speed punches and then comes in, full speed. He's got flying knees, spin kicks. I mean, the guy's very exciting to watch fight.
Yeah, and you got Alex Oliveira on this card, too, facing a promotional newcomer with more syllables in his name. Ramazan Kuramagomedov is now the opponent for Alex Oliveira. It was originally supposed to be Randy Brown. We also were supposed to have Alonzo Menifield on this card, Jeff, and William Knight, but that one is off because Menifield tested positive for COVID.
Yeah, we were supposed to have 11 fights on this card. Now we're down to 10, and we haven't got the weigh-in day. People can remember last week we lost 2 people between the weigh-ins, 2 fights between the weigh-ins and the fight. One while the guy was in the octagon waiting for his opponent to walk out. So right now we have 10 fights, and hopefully they all stay on. I hate for fights to fall off. I hate for fighters to train and to go through that training camp and to put in all that work and then have it fall off because they tested positive to COVID late, or a back spasm as it was last week for one of the fighters. Hopefully all these go off, man. But yeah, we lost the fight today. Lost one today.
Yeah, and we lost the Asuncao fight leading up to this. Rafael Asuncao was supposed to be on against Barcelos, and then you were also supposed to have on this fight card Hannah Cyphers and Emily Whitmire. That one didn't end up happening, so this is life in the UFC every week now. You're having fights scrapped and canceled, and I think we lost 3. We lost 2 last week on the day of the fight. We lost one the day of, like early afternoon, and then we lost one with a fighter waiting in the cage after he walked out. And that wasn't COVID, that was back spasms.
Yeah, that was back spasm, which can happen. I mean, like I said, this is a brutal sport, man. And then that was because of dehydration, right? I mean, I have to think so. I mean, that's usually where you get your muscle spasms, and you need some potassium and whatever to recover. I feel like that's probably a weight cutting issue. Probably got more dehydrated than he wanted to, and then had spasms the next night as he was warming up. It's just unfortunate.
He should have put some of the cream on from Level Select CBD from CBD Emporium. It's UFC Preview with Gries and Cain, powered by CBD Emporium, featuring Level Select CBD. Let me tell you guys, at 49, I feel amazing. I slather it all over myself before I do the show. I'm sitting like this. It's the mint cream. You just inhale. You get that little Vicks effect, too. Clears the nostrils and the lungs right out. It's a beautiful thing, but it really is amazing. They have 3 levels for 3 levels of pain. And right now, and it's not for just pain, it helps with anxiety, helps you with sleep and everything else. But just because we love you, just because you're loyal fans of MMA Weekly and the UFC, Level Select CBD and CBD Emporium are going to give you 50% off your purchase of either product line right now by going to stayinthefightmma.com. That's stayinthefightmma.com and entering the code MMA50. That's MMA50, the code at stayinthefightmma.com. for CBD Emporium featuring Level Select CBD. Level Select CBD, stay in the fight. And Jeff, I don't know if either heavyweight in this matchup, this main event this weekend, Rozenstruik and Ciryl Gane, one thing we know for sure, not many guys have been able to stay in the fight against either one of these guys.
No. Both these guys are headhunters. They finish fights. This is an interesting matchup. And Jim, over the last few days, I did do a deep dive into videos and watch and try to look for tendencies and then where I feel like each fighter could exploit the other one. Man, Rozenstruik has a devastating jab. His stiff jab, his left hand. And what worries me about Gane is Gane keeps his right hand low and his left hand up. So he's like this. And I feel like he's going to get hit eventually in this fight. And then also Rozenstruik likes to hit you with that left hook as you're coming in. He uses it as a lead hook instead of a jab. But a very, very devastating jab. And I feel like Gane has to be aware of that. He's got to get that right hand up for this fight. Hopefully in sparring, he's recognized what I recognize watching the fight videos, and they're professionals. He's got a great team. I'm sure that they've done that. But that's what stood out to me in watching the videos is that Gane keeps his right hand down, and he's a Muay Thai guy, so he likes to get inside, although he does have good leg kicks from the outside. But he likes to get inside, work those knees and elbows in the clinch position, where Rozenstruik likes to strike from the outside. He likes to land his kicks, keep his jab, land that stiff jab to keep you on the outside. And once he hurts you with the jab, then he usually comes in for the kill. This is a very, very interesting fight, Jim. I mean, very interesting. I'm going to pick, I'll say it. I'm switching. I know last week I was like, I think Gane's going to do this. After doing the deep dive into it, I'm going to pick Rozenstruik to beat Gane in this fight and maintain his number 3 ranking or possibly even move to number 2. I just feel like maybe he has a little bit faster hands, and I can't sleep on that jab, the most underutilized weapon in all of combat sports, and he has it. But he cannot let Ciryl Gane get on the inside. If he lets Gane get on the inside, he's probably going to face the same result as he did against Gane.
Yeah, in the clinch and on the ground, Gane has a clear advantage. Striking in close range, I'd have to say Gane has the advantage. At a little bit of distance, it's Rozenstruik. Both guys athletic. Ciryl Gane's a great athlete. And by the way, Rozenstruik has had trouble against fighters who fight in the same style as Ciryl Gane, and you talked about earlier the way Overeem fought him, for example. That's what I'd be watching the whole time if I were Ciryl Gane in his camp, and obviously had trouble standing there trying to trade with Francis, as the whole world has. He has dead bodies in his wake everywhere he goes. But when I look at Rozenstruik and Gane, striker versus striker, but it's not that simple. It's not, you can sit here all day long and say striker versus striker, but two completely different techniques of striking. And you said it earlier, Jeff, Ciryl Gane is going to want to get in tight and control the distance that Rozenstruik's trying to keep. So he wants to impede on Rozenstruik's space, get in there, throw those elbows, get in the clinch, maybe take him down, press him up against the cage as often as he can, get in tight and fight dirty with him, whereas Rozenstruik's going to want to keep it a little showy and be on the outside. He loves that jab. He likes to come in with the hook, and that to me is interesting when you come in with that hook because you never know what's coming. But I also think Ciryl Gane, in tight, in the clinch, with those knees, with those kicks, he can outpoint Rozenstruik in this fight. He can also take him down and beat him on the ground. He can submit him. He's got 2 submission wins. I just think Gane's more athletic and has more tools in the toolbox. I think he's stronger physically, so I'm going with Ciryl Gane.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's an interesting fight. I feel like Rozenstruik has faster hands when I watch him. He's got faster hands than Gane, but Gane, I agree with you, is the more athletic fighter. The way he throws leg kicks, the way he jumps in with the flying knee, he's got more mobility to him. And so I agree with that. Look, Rozenstruik has to land that jab. If Gane's able to slip that jab and get to the inside, Rozenstruik's going to have a long night. And then what you brought up, Overeem, while he lost that fight in the final seconds, he laid a blueprint out on how to beat Rozenstruik. Happens to be the same blueprint to beat Francis Ngannou. You take him down. You get inside, you take him down.
Yep.
And take his biggest weapons away from him. And Gane does have the ability to do that. But this is where I'm talking about experience, and this is where Gane's going to have to prove to me. Does he have that fight IQ to do that? Or is he going to go out here against a kickboxer and him being a Muay Thai fighter and turn this into a striking battle to where that's all this is? This is a kickboxing match. If he does that, I feel like he could still win that fight, but I feel like that's a huge mistake. If he approaches this fight intelligently and realizes I have an advantage on the clinch, I have an advantage on the ground, then I feel like Gane is going to have more success, but he has to show that to me. I feel like he hasn't had to do that. He hasn't had to come back from much adversity in his fight so far. And so he's going to have to show that to me. I'm not saying that he doesn't have it at all. It's just that I'm an evidence-based kind of guy. And so I want to see it. Rozenstruik really hasn't shown me that, except for the Overeem fight. What Rozenstruik showed me that is even with 4 seconds left, he has knockout power, and he's still trying to finish a fight, even though he was likely at least 3 rounds down on the scorecards. So I give that a plus for him. I'm like, okay, he showed me something there where Gane just hasn't had the opportunity to show me that. Yeah, man, I'm going to stick with the favorite, or not the favorite. I'm going to stick with the higher ranked guy, actually the underdog. I'm going to go with Rozenstruik in this. But I think that this fight won't end early. I think this is going to be a second or a third round kind of a fight where both guys have.
But it's not going to go the full 5, you don't think?
No, I don't think this fight goes the full 5. No, but I don't think it ends in like the Ngannou Rozenstruik fight. It's like, this isn't going to end in 20 seconds, in my opinion. I don't think that either one of these guys have that. Well, I don't want to say that. Every heavyweight has that.
Yeah.
But I just feel like that's unlikely.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think this is going to be an incredible fight. And hopefully, even if Gane loses, as long as he does a really good performance against a third or fourth ranked guy, however you want to view him, it doesn't hurt him at 7. It doesn't hurt him. Rozenstruik has everything to lose in this fight. If he loses this fight, he's going to drop out of the top 5 pretty quickly. And Gane's going to jump right into the top 4 or 3.
Smash that like button, hit subscribe, get the bell so that you'll be notified when we have more shows coming up. Speaking of which, we'll be streaming live during this fight on Saturday night from the Apex UFC Vegas 20. Jairzinho, I love saying that, Rozenstruik against Ciryl Gane. Man, what a great fight this has the potential to be. Jeff's picking Rozenstruik. I'm picking Gane. What about the co-main, Jeff? When we talk about the co-main, a big fight at light heavyweight, really for Magomed Ankalaev as they try to push him and get him up toward the top and maybe a title shot in a division that's very thin at the top, especially with the champion Israel Adesanya going up to fight Jan Blachowicz in our next event, UFC's pay-per-view on March 6th, and we can't wait for that one. That's on the same card as Sterling and Jan and Amanda Nunes and Megan Anderson. But Nikita Krylov, not being anybody's gatekeeper, he's been around a long time. He's the higher-ranked fighter, and literally you're going to have to stomp on him and get over his carcass to get there. He is a tough out. We're going to learn a lot about Ankalaev this weekend.
Oh, yeah. Nikita's a very tough out. I think this is a great matchup because while he's not necessarily, I don't consider him a gatekeeper yet in his career, really, but he is kind of that. He's that litmus test for the top 10. If you can do well against Nikita, then you're going to do well in the top 10 or at least deserve those fights. And so I feel like this is sort of a litmus test for Magomedov in a way. I feel like Magomedov has the more hype. It has the more pop kind of behind him right now. And that this is a fight to where he gets to kind of get over that hump, get over that top 10 hump and get solidly into the top 10 and start facing those meaningful fights from 8 and up. But yeah, man, I'm picking Magomed in this fight. I just feel like he's the more fresh fighter. Nikita's been around a long time. We know what we're going to get out of him. I think the UFC knows what they're going to get out of him. And that's why this matchup's being made. And I feel like it's kind of Magomed's coming out party.
Yeah, and when you think about Krylov, his last 3 fights, he beat Ovince St. Preux, lost a split decision to Glover, who's back at the top of the rankings again, and Johnny Walker. He beat Johnny Walker on that weird card in Brazil, the first one with no fans right after COVID, when they had the Kevin Lee Charles Oliveira fight. with no fans in the stands, and that was all the way back in March of last year. Right, and we're about to hit the 1-year anniversary of all the COVID stuff and the shutdowns, and the UFC continuing with all the events that they've done. Jeff, I'm going to go with Montana De La Rosa. I'm going to go with Jimmy Rivera. I'm going to go with Angela Hill, and I'm going to go with Bruce Leroy.
I'm going with Rivera. I'm also going to pick Angela Hill. I feel like Angela's had a resurgence as of late, even though she did lose that fight to Watterson. She got in that fight. She kind of
so
was
close.
out of the. Yeah, and she was out of the UFC, and then she got back in on taking a short notice fight, and she's put together such good performances that you can't ignore her anymore. And so that's what I like about Angela Hill. She's kind of that underdog story, getting that second chance at a UFC run, man, and I got to pull for her. And so I'm going to pick her in that fight. I agree with Rivera in that bantamweight matchup, and then the De La Rosa fight, man, Montana. I don't know.
Too close to call.
Yeah, I think it is too close to call. And plus, I think that there's a lot of girls in that division are getting opportunities because it's kind of thin, and it's just so hard to tell where they fit in. It's just so hard to tell where they fit in, and I don't know where she fits in right now. And so we'll see. Maybe we'll know a little more on Saturday. But those fights are hard to pick whenever you're talking about girls at that level in that matchup. They got a little bit of name value, but they haven't proven anything yet in the organization. They're out to try to do that, and I just don't know where they stand,
Stay in the fight, MMA.com. MMA50 is the code for CBD Emporium featuring Level Select CBD, our title sponsor of UFC Preview. I'm Jim Grieshaber. Call me Gries. We got Jeff Cain. And Jeff, I just want to get your final thoughts before we wrap it up, man. We're going to be streaming live. We have Fallout coming Sunday at 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific. You don't want to miss that one. UFC Fallout every week. We have all kinds of new programming starting and popping up everywhere here on MMA Weekly. Stay on the site all weekend long for all the updates from Jeff and Ken Pishna and Hunter Brownstein and our whole team there. Your final thoughts heading into UFC Vegas 20, Rozenstruik versus Gane.
Well, I mean, I love the main event. I think it's top heavy, but it also, as we brought up, has a ton of meaningful bouts. Don't sleep on this fight card. Definitely tune in for the preliminary fight card and the early main card bouts, because they are definitely some really close matchups, particularly that bantamweight matchup between number 9 and 8, the co-main event between number 8 and 11. I mean, these are the bouts that usually end up being fight of the year candidates, Jim. I mean, honestly, it's these matchups because they're so evenly matched, and they're both all the athletes are trying to move up and make a name for themselves and make their mark, stand out to the UFC matchmakers and Dana White and to the fans. And so I think we're going to see tons of great fights and performances on Saturday. But yeah, man, it's all about the main event, though, isn't it? That heavyweight division leading into March, where we're still back at the UFC Apex for all of these events in March, same as we were in February. But it culminates, it all builds up to that pay-per-view at the end of March between the heavyweights.
Ankalaev, to me, is the big story here other than the main event, because I want to see his rise in the light heavyweight division. They're expecting big things out of him. You could be looking at an Anthony Smith fight. The Reyes and Prochaska fight was supposed to be on this card. That's coming up in a little less than a month. Dominic Reyes and Yuri Prochaska, the former champion. So when I look at this division, it's a golden opportunity for a guy like Ankalaev to slide in there with Jan Blachowicz getting ready to fight Israel Adesanya. Izzy moving up to fight Jan because of the lack of names and star power in the light heavyweight division with John Jones vacating his title. That's number one. And then the last thing for me, Derek Lewis threw it down last week. There's the gauntlet, boys. You want a title shot, you got to beat or top what Derek Lewis did last week. Derek Lewis showed you the blueprint right there by starching Curtis Blades, who actually came out and looked really good in that fight. So Cyril Gane and Jairzinho Rozenstruik, the Black Beast, showed you the way. What are you going to do with your opportunity as a main event fighter? Each guy an opportunity to make a whole bunch of money, get a whole bunch of brand awareness, build some fame. I love seeing what fighters do with these opportunities. Talking of Ankalaev, and then, of course, these two guys. Very excited for this fight and cannot wait to stream live with you on Saturday. We will come your way when the fight starts. We'll be on until the completion of it. We're going to be doing a lot of live weigh-ins, live press conferences. We'll take you all the way through to the end of that. And, of course, our UFC Fallout show on Sunday. For everybody at MMA Weekly, for my buddy Jeff Cain, want to thank all of you for watching and being here with us on the most trusted source for news and entertainment in MMA for almost 20 years. MMA Weekly. It's a big year for us, just like a lot of these fighters on this card right now. Appreciate you guys being with us and watching everything we do right here on YouTube. Check out our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Follow us all over the place. It's MMA Weekly's UFC Preview Show, powered by CBD Emporium, featuring Level Select CBD. all kinds of products to choose from. Level Select CBD has the highest concentrations of CBD, no THC whatsoever, and it's the cleanest, purest CBD on the planet. Great for pain, great for stress, great for anxiety, and even better sleep. All kinds of things that make you feel your best and be your best every single day. CBD Emporium featuring Level Select CBD, 50% off right now at stayinthefightmma.com. Enter the code MMA50. That's code MMA50 at stayinthefightmma.com. We'll talk to you Saturday for the live stream. For Jeff Cain, I'm Jim Grieshaber. Keep your game tight and your mind right. Thank you for being here with us on MMA Weekly.